Good evening. Welcome to Third Eye Sight. You're here with Claudine Paki, psychic medium, and Michelle Picoult from Set Right. As we said last week, guys, the discussion we had was so big, we decided to do another episode and perhaps just pick out bits and pieces of what we were talking about. So this week, I thought from our particular topic with exorcism and clearings that the ritualistic behaviour became quite a standout point for myself. So we decided to do this topic this evening, and I wanted to ask Michelle, where did she think this type of behaviour originated from, such as your clearings and your cleansings, and if she can give us an idea where she got her information from.
Yep. Okay, thanks, Claudine. Hello, everyone. Again, thanks for having me back. One of the things that was brought up last week was the fact that I was born and raised in a cult environment. I was born into the cult, so it's not something that I chose. The background in that is extremely diverse, I guess you could say, because it's cults in a general term, and mine, which is not mine, but the cult that I was raised in is Luciferian, which is a breed of Satanism, pretty common now. The rituals and behaviours that we did in that, and as I say, I was in there from birth. Actually, to be fair, I was in there before birth, because the way cults function is they generally pick bloodlines and aim to produce children from those bloodlines to bring out a certain thing. So I was one of what was called, in cults generally, so it's no special thing, but what they call the chosen one. You're trained for all sorts of things. You are put through many, many rituals, which is where the word ritual comes into satanic ritual abuse. The different things that they pick and choose from in those cults are a blend of druidism, a blend of all sorts of different types of witchcraft, if you like, Satanism, Luciferianism. They look at Kabbalah, and all those different things. So I come from a background of, my father come from Jewish roots, which is where I put myself now in the Jewish background. My mother was always Australian. The family coming from there, I know that from my mother's side, we were at least I was fourth generation. So that's where my background is. I had a great deal of wealth of experience, I guess you could say, even if it wasn't desired, in rituals, summonings, different workings through different practices of various types of witchcraft, occultism, esotericism, all those sorts of things. So a lot of that was in my background. I have since started working with people who are coming out of satanic ritual abuse, which we have done all around Australia and also into New Zealand. It's prevalent right across the globe, so it's not something never heard of. A lot of people come out of that with extreme, if they do come out of it, they come out with extreme mental illnesses, usually drug abuse problems, all those sorts of things, because they just can't get help anywhere.
So how did your mother or your family get involved with this sort of?
Well, again, my mother was third generation, at least that I know of, so she was born into it. My father, I don't have that much knowledge of how much my dad had. My dad came as in the Navy, when he was, I think, in his early 20s. My mother and father actually met on a blind date and basically married from there, so it came from those years. But all paths on my father's side was Jewish, was a prisoner of war for some time, so they had picked, and they often do pick that sort of line, especially when you're looking at Kabbalah and those sorts of things. It is Jewish mysticism, so therefore the Jewish lines are very, very sought after. So it's something that obviously my mother's line had generations of cult people, and that she was bred for that. So yeah, it was just a matter of putting the two bloodlines that they wanted to get something out of that. And usually they aim for someone who has psychic abilities, that sort of thing, and then they just build on that. So I wasn't supposed to be, actually.
So how did it affect your daily life? I mean, walking, within, a completely different lifestyle, and you're like in a little box just shoved into this generic lifestyle. How did you sort of see things?
It's a very difficult one to answer that, because anyone who's gone through satanic ritual abuse would know that what the aim is to shatter the psyche to such a degree that they can actually build alternate personalities, that sort of thing. It's something that is controversial, especially across Australia. You don't hear much of it. In the US, it's far more known. Here, it's not. Yeah. So generally speaking, growing up, everyone around you is the same. So the street that I was born into, there was girls my age, there was other kids my age. The whole street were actually involved in wife swapping and ritualistic behaviour. So it was something that was just normal, but it wasn't something that you necessarily think on, if you know what I mean. Mm-hmm. When something is normal, you don't tend to question it. So you're raised in it, it's just normal. My mother, at some point, she went into the churches because she was very, very good at her control. She was a very good controller. She entered in that way, which gave a lot of access to children. It gave her resources and everything else to build into what they call their programming skills. So she went into that, and my father didn't. My father didn't like that side of it, which is odd. But yes, so basically by night I was raised in rituals, satanic events, all those sorts of things, and during the day, nice quiet little life with mum and dad and my sister, and school, and they put me through the Christian schools, through the Christian churches. You basically live two completely different lives. And a lot of the time you don't know, because you do have alternate personalities, you're built for that. You're shattered at a very early age, and it's usually not until much later in life that you actually start having what they call PTSD or flashbacks and start realising, oh, there's something very, very wrong here. We find a lot of victims of that now are so involved in drugs and those sorts of things, because those sorts of things are introduced early to keep the mind on a different path, or to keep them in an altered reality.
So, coming from that background, like the satanic side, and then jumping into the psychic side, the generic side, what were the differences that you could see between what you knew then and what you know now? And what did you find it difficult to sort of integrate or understand how people operate outside of your...
It's been a very, very difficult walk, to be honest. I was raised, I had a lot of ability in my psychic ability. Obviously, I've gone into those areas now. When you're born into a cult like that, you're literally custom made for that sort of thing. So they do rituals to actually enhance psychic ability, and they blend, as everybody does, psychic and spiritual. Whereas man is not just psychic or just spiritual. We actually have those two parts, but it was very, very difficult to come to terms with. From a very young age, I was put through a lot of rituals to open my eyes to the dead. So, and that involves some very, very horrific ritual. They go by the keys of the dead, the Egyptian keys of the dead. They put you through death rituals. So they'll put you into death and then bring you out of death. So there was doctors in my particular cult, and there is in most of them. They need them. But yes, they will take you into death, bring you out of death. So that opens your eyes more and more and more to the dead. And that's something that I just always lived with, I guess. I think I said last week that demonology was my ABCs as a child. I knew more about demons than I did about reading, writing, and arithmetic. It was just a normal way of life. When I had, I guess, moved away from my cult, when I sort of separated, it usually takes about a year of separation from what we call programmers to actually start having those flashbacks, and the mind starts to unravel a little bit, if you like, and you start seeing some of the memories, which is usually blocked. So a lot of people who are satanically abused will sleep through the night, not dream, not have any memories or anything like that. But when you've been outside of the cult for a year, usually it's about a year, the mind starts to reveal things. So you start to have flashbacks, you start to have PTSD, you can go into what they call abreactions, going through a full memory. Those sorts of things started happening is when I started realising, yes, that's what my family went into. It is a eye-opening thing. So the psyche versus Satanism, there's not a lot of difference between it. I find that in the arenas of New Age and those sorts of areas, they blend.
So is it the interpretation that's different and how you interpret the information, or is it what type of information you're trying to extract from the spirit or from the demon? What's the difference between what you see now people doing to how you've learnt how to do it?
I don't see a lot of difference between the practices that are done. What I do see is an absolute deception on the spiritual realm. So when we were going in as Luciferian or Satanists, you're dealing with the same entities that everybody's dealing with now. What I see is the deception from the entities themselves.
Okay,
they will actually play good cop, bad cop. So you think, and a lot of people will say, look, I'm in white witchcraft. To me, I always answer in saying, well, whether you're in the shallow end of the pool or the deep end of the pool, you're still in the pool. So you're dealing with the same entities in white witchcraft as you are in black witchcraft. However, they're bringing out more of their actual real characteristics in the dark stuff.
Now, a lot of people that I've spoken to, obviously I haven't been doing this for 40, 50 years like some people, say there's different levels of people that you're going to be contacting. And that's where if you're talking to the lower end of the spectrum spirits, you're talking to those people who are deceits and more on the demon side. I sort of struggle to understand the difference between those sometimes because I can shut off the ones that I don't want to hear. And then I guess really what I'm asking is how do you decipher between the different ones?
Okay, there is a big difference between dealing with those who are deceased and whether they are aiming for deceitful works or the deceased that are really honestly just passed away and don't have resolution in certain things. So you're coming in from a medium perspective. Your eyes are opened in the dimension of the dead, if you like, into death. You're dealing with people in death. When I was raised in Satanism and Luciferianism, they don't aim to just open your eyes in one dimension.
Right.
Because we're also dealing with not just the dead, but also with entities and rankings of entities. That's where you see a difference. So when you go in, you see the dead.
Yep.
Good or bad, you see the dead.
So you're saying there's a difference between a medium seeing the dead that have just passed over or family members to walking into a home trying to do a cleansing and releasing those entities or getting rid of those entities.
Yes.
So in what way are they different though?
From demonic powers?
Yeah.
There's certain, first of all, demonic powers, and this is where it gets actually very tricky, and a lot of people struggle with this because the term is demon. That is actually incorrect for a start. Because the term demon is actually coming from a Greek word demone or demon, which is actually when the Greeks were dealing with demons, it was referring to their ancestors or guides, if you like. So the word demon has become negative in all its connotations, whereas back in the Greek times when Jesus Christ or Yeshua was walking the earth, demon was a term they used for deceased souls. Okay. But now the understanding is different. Way back in the day, it was KK demon or demon, which had good or bad connotations. So demon is not really a fair term. In scriptures, are referred to deities, entities, unclean spirits. When you're looking at unclean spirits, usually they're the ones that they're talking about, the ones that are deceased, not because they're filthy, dirty, or what have you, but because the dead corpses as a whole were considered unclean. So it's just the spirit of unclean spirit, if you like, a dead, deceased person. So you're going in, you're looking for those things. They're not demons. From our everyday terms now, demon means an evil entity, which are not human.
Yes.
That's the difference. Okay. So it really depends on what the understanding is because generally now people refer to a demon and they're talking about an evil spirit or a negative evil spirit. It's not actually a disembodied soul.
Right. Yeah.
The original meaning is.
And I think we get confused between the two. That people naturally think that it's my aunt that's gone psycho for a little bit and she's transferred into this person that they don't know. So I think there's a bit of confusion. Again, and I think that's part of that ritualistic behaviour that people have embedded in our heads that, they're one of the same.
Yes, that's right. It's a misconception or a misunderstanding of what the word demon actually means.
So how do they evolve from one to another?